I've heard High Life in my own dialect, in my mother tongue. I've heard it in Igbo. These are the two languages that I've heard High Life in. I don't know what other languages that, like, prior to my research, I didn't even know that there was Ghanaian High Life. I didn't.
1, 2, 3.
The eavesdrop.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Eavesdrop. My name is Layefa. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Last week, there wasn't a podcast. I'm at a stage of my life where I don't really want to overshare. So yeah, there just wasn't an episode last week. Okay, what I can say is I'm in a transition-ish and I haven't made a concrete decision of things just yet. So I can leave it at that. It might be that this season is coming to the end. It might be that this podcast is coming to an end. But once I've made a decision, I will share that with you. But I did say at the beginning of this season that this will be the most inconsistent season for the podcast, because I am trying to put my eggs in different baskets. So yeah. How are we all doing? How are we all feeling? It's officially the summer holiday here in the UK. It's been glorious weather. I'm trying my hardest not to complain, because how long is the summer usually, right? So what are we rinsing? I think it's just inevitable that you lot know that I was going to talk about Beyonce's album. And not that I've been rinsing it, but it is something that I have dipped my head in and out of, try to listen to it. So, she's had her album out, Renaissance. Apparently it was leaked the day before, and then I don't know. I don't really know. I don't understand. But yeah, what are your thoughts? I really want to hear everybody's honest opinion. I've tried my hardest to not listen to anybody else's thoughts and opinions just yet, and I think maybe next week I might do a proper deep dive into the album. I might not, but I will say for now that it's nice to hear her sing again. Her voice sounds so fresh. It's so amazing. She makes me want to go start having vocal lessons, because she's just doing a lot with her vocals. It sounds so good. I will say that I admire her freedom on this album. She does a lot of, she's breaking a lot of musical patterns and not following the status quo of, like, how a song is written, like a verse, chorus, verse, that kind of thing. She breaks a lot of patterns, and it's interesting. I think I admire that she's at a level where she can afford to do that. Like, I'm just doing it for me. She's loving it, and she's put out it feels like it's very well thought out. Now, I did say I'm not going to do a deep dive on this album, but yeah, because I haven't listened to it completely and fully, and I don't want to get anybody else's opinion in my head, but that's how I feel right now. That yeah, so her voice sounds good. I love her musical freedom. What I will say is, sonically, it's not my favorite of her albums. Obviously, I think how it's just that I don't know if it's because she's done. When somebody creates a certain sound, you just have an expectation of them. And it's not like I don't like that sound that she's created. It's just not my favorite of hers. And I feel almost like if that sound had come out of somebody else, maybe somebody who is typically in that genre, would I appreciate it more? I don't know. I might respect it more. Not that I don't respect it, but yeah, it's not my favorite of her albums. I will say that. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. I want to hear some of you lot's opinions. What is your favorite track on the album? Tell me what I should listen to and re-listen to. I think those are some of the things that I want to hear. Like, tell me what is your favorite track so that I can listen to it and listen to it and listen to it and see if I feel the same way. Because I think even like the single she released, what's the song called again? Why has my brain gone dead? Break My Soul. Yeah. It's not my favorite of her of her tracks. Like, it's not like I did make a comment on it when it initially came out, and I'm not sure if I made it clear, but yeah, having listened to it over and over and over and over again, it's still not my favorite. So yeah, all hail Queen Beyonce. It is what it is. Obviously there has been a little bit of controversy with Khalees. Now, if you don't know Khalees, a musician, singer, she also in the sort of like chef cooking realm now, but there was a bit of an outburst on the internet, and Khalees is a singer. She sang, "I hate you so much right now. I hate you so much right now. I hate you so much right now." And the other song, "My milkshake brings other boys to the yard." Those are like her, like some of her greatest hits. Obviously she's got some other bangers as well, but those are like the ones that really went commercial. So on the interweb, somebody, I think it had been stated that it was on one of the tracks called Energy on the Beyonce album, Khalees had there was a collaboration, but it turns out it wasn't really a collaboration. Now I'm gonna leave you all to do your own research, but she had a bit of a vent on the interwebs, and I think she has every right to be emotional, because obviously if there are things that happen behind the scenes that none of us will ever be privy to and be aware of, but it sounds like she'd been silent for a long time and she just wanted to speak her mind. So anyway, she expressed herself and said basically it was theft and it wasn't a collaboration. She wasn't aware. I mean, there's something to be said about whether she owns the rights to her masters and blah blah blah, but the music industry is very, very shady. It doesn't sound like the most honest industry. Not like I'm in it like that, like I'm just an admirer from the scenes, but it sounds like a lot of people don't get paid what they deserve. It sounds like other industries, like the publishing, in terms of writing books and stuff like that, they're a lot more honest. So yeah, the music industry. So there's some things that she was unhappy with, and Beyonce's response, I don't know if she's actually spoken up about it. As of the recording of this episode, it's Thursday today, but she basically just took out the sample. Is it that she took out the sample, or she took off Khalees's name? One or the other, or both. So it kind of like, all right, that's that argument done about theft. Or there are some issues between Khalees and Pharrell, who was in the Neptunes, and how they had a whole thing back in the day when Khalees released her first album and second album. So, she was really speaking her mind, and it doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound good. It's a bit of a shame because we all love Pharrell, and if it turns out that he is or has, it seems that he had done her wrong, which we're not clear on, but this is allegedly. It's hard not to like somebody who's so likable. Do you know what I mean? So there's that. Then okay, so there's that on that. So if you've seen the whole Khalees drama, let me know. I'm just like telling you what happened without really saying what happened, and I don't really have any thoughts on it because it's a bit of a shame if it's true that she's been done dirty. It's not very nice. It doesn't sound very nice. And Khalees's situation is really tricky because I don't think it's a case of being on her side or not being on her side, or believing her or not believing her. But the fact of the matter is that everybody has, that's her truth. And she's allowed to be angry. She's allowed to be emotional. She's a whole human being. She's allowed to feel the way she feels. She's allowed to be in her feelings. I think from experience is that when people speak about certain things online that are between you and that person, it doesn't, there are two sides to every story. There's their side, your side, there's the whole truth, and it doesn't mean that any of it is a lie. It's just different perspectives. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, she's just speaking on her side of things, and I'd never seen her in. It's nice to see. I don't know. She looked good though. Can we just say that she looked bad? Did you see her hairstyle? And I think the best thing to do is check out her Instagram page. I don't know if she's taken it down by now, but there she's left it on her feed where she's just speaking her mind about the sample. I don't even know if she's listened to the sample and how she would have liked at least a phone call, if not from Beyonce, but from her people, just to shout her and say, look, we're using this song. That being said, I have listened to the song and it doesn't sound like I can't maybe my ears are really bad, but like I can't hear the reference, but that's neither here nor there. If it was sampled, it was sampled, and I think it's been taken off now. So that's that. So moving on to what have you been watching, because that was what I was well, it's not what I was rinsing, but I did see that on the interwebs. I've been watching Afrobeats, the backstory, which is on Netflix. It's such a good watch. I recommend, if anybody is an Afrobeats fan or you're curious as to how Afrobeats came about, I would recommend watching it. I only started watching it last night. I'm on episode 2. So it's basically a docu-series or a documentary. Well, no, it's a docu-series. It was produced and directed by Ayol Shania. I hope I've said his name right. So I'm on episode 2, which kind of just delves into the late 90s in particular, what was going on in the scene, what was going on in Lagos. He makes reference to the 5-beat pattern, which is like the base of Afrobeat music. It's like the main source. Do you understand? That's like the foundation. Then at the end, he talks about this big collaboration by this Ghanaian artist and a Nigerian artist, which I suppose blew up at the time. Maybe it blew up in Nigeria, because I'm not aware of that song. But yeah, so that's what I've been watching. And let me tell you what led me down this rabbit hole. So recently I've had a lot of comments, like one of my old videos has just started getting a lot of commentary and a lot of views. And I was just like, hang on, like my village people calling me, like, what's going on? What did I do now? And it turns out that a video that I did 2 years ago, I actually recorded it in the lockdown. I think it was 2020. I'm pretty sure it wasn't 2019. I'm pretty sure it was 2020. I recorded a video called The History of Afrobeats, and I did make a disclaimer. And I did say that it was my version of events, right? And I want to say that because everybody, just like I said about like Khalees, everybody is entitled to their story, to tell their truth. Now, it doesn't mean that mine, like that, when I'm stating that something is my version of events, I'm saying that this is my truth, this is my fact. So you could take it or leave it, do with it what you will. But at the time, this Afrobeats documentary hadn't been done. Obviously it was in the workings, because you could see from this documentary, it's like, I don't know, 30 years worth of content that he's compiled into this 12 episode docuseries. And it's so well thought out. It's so well documented. He's talking to the greats of the greats. He's talking to artists before we knew who they were, before they were anybody. You know, he's got footage of that. So it's really, really, for somebody who is, I'm such a music head. You lot know that I love music, and I like, for me to have done this video at the time about the history of Afrobeat, my version of events, is just because I was passionate about the genre. And even in this video, I will leave my particular video that I'm talking about, I will leave it in the description box and also in the show notes, so that if you wish to check it out, you can at your own time. I wasn't going to watch this documentary, but I thought, well, clearly this documentary has sparked up a lot of conversation. It's got a lot of people talking, and now people are wanting to find out more. Hence, they're coming across my particular YouTube video. Now, the reason why I made that video at the time is I spoke about it is because there was this whole, the Verses was very popular on Instagram. I saw a comment on the Verses between Beanie Man and Bounty Killer. And it just shut down the internet. That Verses literally broke the internet. It was so entertaining. It was so good to watch. I don't even think I watched the whole thing, but I saw comments like, oh, and rightfully so, like Jamaicans being very proud of their culture and, saying how it has influenced this, that, and the third. And it has. It really, really has. So, and also having my ear to the ground and listening to podcasts and other music lovers and people who are not part of the culture, the West African culture, the African culture, or the Nigerian culture, and really wanting to understand where did Afrobeats come from. And I've seen those questions pop up so many times, and I made it my duty to make this video almost like my little version of a documentary. And I only did it because unless you're part of the culture, unless you have close proximity to it, you're never going to know. And most of us know that a lot of African history, and this just isn't West African history, but the whole of Africa, a lot of African history is oral. Hardly any of it, not a lot of it is written. And especially when you are in the Western world or in the diaspora, unless it's written, it's not necessarily considered fact. Another thing is that when it's just oral history, things get lost in translation. And again, if you don't have proximity to the culture, if you are not there, if it's not your cousin, auntie, brother, sister, mum, dad, you're never going to know the genesis of a particular thing. And in this case, I'm talking about the genre Afrobeats, right? So I thought, well, I love music and I have this catalogue of all this different music that I've heard through, my lifetime, from birth till the age that I am now, things that have influenced me, the things that haven't influenced me, things that I liked, things that I didn't like. And especially like when you live in the UK, but you're from a Nigerian household, when the door's shut, you're not in London, you're not in the UK, you're in Nigeria. Do you understand? Like the culture is there, the food, the language, all, you know what I mean? So I wanted to just share my experience with people. I don't know. I got a lot of people pressed. I feel like I did. And it wasn't my intention to upset anybody if I did. I was just talking my truth. And I'm not apologizing for anything I said. I think that if there are certain errors and certain things that I've said, it might be dates, because I don't know. I mean, as of the time, I did the research as best as I could at the time. But if this particular Netflix documentary had been out during the time of me thinking about I wouldn't have ever thought to make the video that I made about Afrobeat. Never, ever, ever, because why would I, when this docu-series has everything you need? It's so well. What else could I add? I have nothing to add. I'll now just be talking about my own experience, my own distinct. Nobody cares about my, let's be real. And the only reason why I didn't, from my perspective, because that's all I know, that's all I knew, that's all I currently know. Not currently, no. That's all I knew. And obviously, having started watching this docu-series, I know a lot more now. And I'm only on episode 2, so I do plan to keep watching it. And so I feel like all of this is a bit of a disclaimer, saying that I made that at the time because I felt like it was needed. Nobody had spoken about Afrobeat in depth, and nobody Afrobeats, and it's only after watching the second episode that I can actually maybe start to understand the difference between Afrobeat and Afrobeats with an S, right? Because initially I was like, I don't know, nobody's going to tell me anything about there being a difference, right? But clearly there is a difference in the sense of the style, and also not the style is only slightly different from my perspective sonically, only slightly different, but it's more different just because I feel like it's at a particular generation, at a particular point in time, like the late 90s, early 2000s. That's when I feel like, okay, now we're hearing Afro beats with an S. Now I could be wrong. Feel free to add your own salt and pepper, because people have done so on the other video that I'm talking about in particular. People have been very pressed on some of the things that I've stated, and it's like, well, don't fight me on my truth. Like, if you want to add your own, fine, add your own, but don't fight me on my own truth. So yeah, so I'm saying all of this to say that had this documentary been out at the time, I would have never thought it wouldn't have crossed my mind. I wouldn't have bothered, because I felt like, well, why are you gonna listen to me when the information is there? So now I'm telling you all, you can watch my video, but you can also watch this docu-series as to the backstory, the history of Afrobeats, how it all came about. Initially, what I was finding in the comments was that people seemed to be annoyed or maybe upset about my reference to High Life and making a comparison or a correlation to High Life and Afrobeats. And in my mind, I was like, how can I be wrong? And okay, it might not be a fact, but after watching this docu-series, clearly there's a truth in my theory of believing that Afrobeats came from High Life, because now, having a better understanding, you've got the influence of hip hop, you've got High Life, you've got Jamaican music like reggae, reggae. No, these are two different genres. But the influence of reggae, you've got R&B in the mix, and then you've got the what was the local sound all there in which makes up the Afro beats that we hear today. So I wasn't necessarily aware of hip hop being so heavily influential in the making of Afrobeat. But it makes sense. Of course, it's like, of course it makes sense, because there's always a cross influence with all of these genres. They're all cousins. You could talk about reggae, you could talk about reggaeton, you could talk about R&B, you could talk about hip hop, you can talk about you could even, I even want to go as far to talk about like garage and maybe not so, funky house, because they're in the sense, they all have this vibe, and it might not be the same 5-beat pattern, but they all have this vibe that it's like there's a similarity, there's a resemblance, we are relatives. We might be distant cousins, but we are somehow there. And there's I've been influenced by you, but you've also been influenced by me. There's a cross influence continually happen, and I think that's some of the things that I picked up in watching this docuseries. Of course, I'm only on episode 2, but I'm absolutely loving it, and it's interesting to hear some of the big names, and even when they mentioned Daddy Shoki, and I was like, oh my goodness, yes, I know this person, yes. Like, okay, a lot of the other names I'd never heard of. I'm not in Nigeria, but I'm like, oh yes, I know Daddy Shoki, I know this person, and some other names that they've mentioned, and I'm like, yes, and these are like the old, I'm clicking my fingers like an old African auntie, but the old timers, do get. So I've really enjoyed, I'm just looking at my phone, I've really enjoyed watching it so far. I'm going to continue to watch it, and it's interesting to see like people debate on my platform about High Life and the genesis of High Life. Now, I want to say something, and it might get me in trouble, right? Because as I said earlier, a lot of African history is oral. It's not written. And unfortunately, unless it's written, sometimes it's not considered fact. But I'm so happy about this Afrobeats docu-series, because it's now like, if you are unsure, if you're not clear, go and study it, go and watch this docu-series, and do you know what I mean? There's so much that can come out of it. So I'm so glad that somebody had the idea and was just collecting all of this footage to compile into what we've just seen, or on Netflix. So let's talk about high life for a minute. Nigerian high life, Ghanaian high life, this high life, that. I don't care. It's all high life, Abby. Right. Let's just get it. So I'm a little bit, understand that I'm a little bit distanced from the whole debate and the argument, but there seems to be some sort of conflict or debate as to where high life started, right? Now, in this video that I made, I mentioned that high life started in Ghana, and the reason why I did that is I didn't know that, but that's with the research that I had done. It's documented everywhere. Now, just because it is written that it started in Ghana, that's the first sounds that they heard when the colonizer came to, obviously it wasn't called Ghana at the time, the Gold Coast, right? That's what they were hearing. Doesn't mean that it wasn't also being played in Nigeria. Obviously, it wasn't called Nigeria at the time. Again, it doesn't mean that it wasn't being played, because just because it wasn't written doesn't mean that it didn't happen there. That's something that I want to make very clear. Now, this is my theory. This doesn't mean that it's fact. What I'm saying is a theory, right? Doesn't mean that it's fact. But what I'm saying is, just because it's written that it started somewhere else doesn't mean that whilst they heard it, because when they say it started, that's what they're saying is that's where they first heard it, right? And you know that with Europeans, when it comes to history, it's always written down. Africans, we don't write our shit down. We don't. We will ask this auntie who knows that auntie, who knows the other auntie. And then from there, even our own lineage, we'll be asking this person to find out, are we actually related to such and such? It's not written down. So where I'm going, if you can follow me here, is that just because they said it was played in Djibouti doesn't mean it wasn't also being played in France. Do you get my reference? So just because they said, oh yeah, it was being played in Ghana, doesn't mean that it wasn't also being played in Nigeria, but it just wasn't written. Now, this is just my theory, because I've heard high life in my own dialect, in my mother tongue. I've heard it in Igbo. These are the two languages that I've heard high life in. I don't know what other languages that, like, prior to my research, I didn't even know that there was Ghanaian high life. I didn't. And obviously, having watched this Afrobeats documentary, we're hearing, okay, this is the genesis of whatever. Now, that's just me saying what I'm saying, right? You can fight with yourselves about it. Don't argue with me about it, because some people have been very, very rude, very, very rude. And it's just like, yo, like, let's not do that. I'm just stating my own. And I think also, it goes, people fighting, is fighting the right word? People disputing about the genesis of high life and this and that and the third, and now everybody is claiming Afrobeats. I think it just goes to the success of what we are hearing Afrobeats today. Do you know what I mean? It's winning Grammys, it's touring the world, it's selling out stadiums in the UK and all over. Do you know what I mean? So I think it just goes to the success of what Afrobeats is, because if it was a failure, we wouldn't hear people claiming it the way it's being claimed. Let's just call a spade a spade. What do they say? Success has many fathers, right? Because everybody wants to say, oh, this, that, and the third about this thing that everybody seems to have had a finger on or an input with. So I think that's where I'm gonna leave it at. That is that it just goes to the success of what Afrobeats is today. Everybody wants to claim it, and I'm not gonna like where I think it is important to understand where high life started and this, that, and the third. But having watched this documentary, right, this documentary is understanding that Lagos seems to be the main area, the main melting pot. I want to use a better word, but I can't think of it right now. It seems to be the place where Afrobeats really grew from, the genesis. That's what I wouldn't say. Like, it just seems like to be the main and where is Lagos? Do you know what I mean? And we're not talking about Lagos in Portugal. We're talking about the Lagos in West Africa. Do you understand? So I think there's a lot of learning, and I think that everybody who is African and West African in particular should feel, a sense of pride. And I'm not just going to say Nigerian. I'm not just going to say Ghanaian. I'm going to say West African and Africa as a whole. Like, what Afrobeats has done for, like, I think it's something to be proud of. It's something to feel, you're like, oh my goodness, like, this is such a cool thing, and this is, your culture, and this is part of your culture, even if they're not singing in your dialect, or do you know what I mean? So I think it's something to be proud of. What I will say, I mean, I haven't come to the end of the docuseries yet, because I've been talking about the docuseries and also talking about my video, because they were both talking about the same topic. But the lack of women in the scene is very telling of the culture. I'm looking at the Afrobeat scene and how many female artists that are like really, really shining, like Tiwa Savage, Yemi Alade, Ira Star, who I absolutely adore. I absolutely adore her. I think she's fire. I love her so much. Like, I'm big stan on her lyrical content, her delivery, her unique sound. Oh my goodness, Ira Star, love her. Anyway, and I'm a huge, like, I love Don Jazzy. Somebody tell Don Jazzy that I'm here, that I'm right here. I'm sitting right here, and I can throw some lyrics, and I can sing a small tune as well. That I'm here. I'm right here. Just come and find me. Anyway, I'm not serious. I think it's very telling of the culture, but I know that that's a problem internationally, like in the music industry across the world. Like, it's a problem that with women in the music scene. It's just a big issue. Well, I'm just saying, Don Jazzy, like, I'm done with the babies, so I'm ready to go. I'm ready to, like, I'm on it. I'm ready when you are. Do you know what I mean? Can somebody like DM him and let him know that I'm here? I can hold a note. Tell him that I can hold a note, and I'm here, and I'm ready to go. Okay, just do that for me, because I really like Don Jazzy. What else? I think the docuseries is great, and I almost wish that I mean, again, as I said earlier, if that docuseries was already out there, I would have never thought to make my own video about the history of Afrobeats, because that docuseries has everything you need. All the questions that you want answering, it's all there. It's just so well done. It's so well thought out. Enjoyed. I even love, like, what can I say? What can I say again? It's just a good thing. And I think that's what I wanted to just kind of state, that, like, argue amongst yourselves about the origins of Afrobeats, because now you've got this docu-series here. I think in my initial video, I didn't talk about Afrobeats. I mean, I said Afrobeats, but I didn't say Afrobeats, because I knew that there was a difference, but my understanding of it wasn't that clear until having watched this documentary where, Ayo, he clears a lot of things up, and it has a better I have a better understanding of the difference now. I'm not sure if my dear, let's leave it at that. It's as I said, success has many fathers. If I blow tomorrow, or when I blow tomorrow, everybody will say, "Oh I helped her do this. I helped her do that. I helped her hold the microphone. I helped her turn the record button on. I help." That's how success is. Yeah. So I think everybody should, like, who has been part of the scene and in the culture, should feel proud. And I'm a little bit, I know it sounds weird, especially considering that I live in the UK. I don't even live in Nigeria, but I'm very protective of Afrobeat a little bit, Afrobeat and Afrobeats, just because, like, I remember, I think, is it last season when I spoke about the whole Justin Bieber being on Wizkid's track. It was just because of feeling like, let's keep this genre authentic. Let's keep it, not like you're trying to be a gatekeeper or anything like that, but in the sense that make sure that the capital that is gained goes to the right people, right? The capital that is gained from making this amazing music, that it goes to the right people, and it doesn't. Anyway, it's so hard. Sometimes you want to say so much, but it's like, what I will say, which I think some people are pressed about, and I'm really not in the right place to give my own opinion, is that there might be a little bit of ethnicity wars that I'm really not aware of about Ayo Shonea storytelling. Now, as I said earlier, he starts from, I suppose, like the mid to late 90s and carries the story further about, the backstory of Afrobeats. Now, in my own video, I really went as early as, when the colonizer touched the African continent, what they said they were listening to. And what I was trying to do was trying to bridge the gap between the music that was played by our ancestors to the music that we're listening to now. And I was trying to break down the instruments that were being played and the instruments that had been adopted and things like that. So I was trying to bridge the gap between, and then obviously highlighting Fela Kuti, who is the godfather of Afrobeat. And I've even heard Afrobeat artists say that they're not Afrobeats, that they are Afrobeats, because there seems to be a conflict. Not everybody has come to one understanding between Afrobeat without the S and Afrobeats with the S. Now, again, from my understanding, having watched this documentary, and as I said, I'm only on episode 2, Afrobeats with an S, it sounds to me like a new generation thing. It sounds to me like, oh, it's Afrobeat, but it's now the packaged one that has the influence of hip hop and and R&B and reggae, and there's and then obviously the local music that is being played, like the High Life and the Shino Peters and all the things like that. So that's what this is my own understanding. So everybody, get your pen and paper, take your own notes. If you want to fight me, go and make your own video, go and make your own podcast about it, argue amongst yourselves. What I'm saying is, this is my own understanding of what I'm seeing, because as much as it's being celebrated, which we should be excited about, there seems to be some conflict about certain people or certain artists or certain countries or certain regions or certain whatever not being given their flowers. Now, if there is somebody or something or whatever that you want to give flowers to, start writing your own blog piece about it. Because as I said, the biggest issue with African history is it's all oral. And when it's oral and it's passed down from generation to generation, things get lost in translation, and especially in regards to proximity. Now, I'm all the way over in the UK. Do you know what I mean? I'm not even in Nigeria, and I can only speak from my own experiences, and then my experiences are watered down because I'm not in the heart of Lagos as much as I would like to be, because it's a vibes. I'm not in the heart of Lagos. So I think there needs to be a coming together. There needs to be like almost like I want to say a Wikipedia document, but Wikipedia is not your most reliable resource. But there needs to be something like a coming together of it. You know, now we've got this documentary, and if you want to write your own. I think the issue is what will be taken is the resources that have a reputation. Do you know what I mean? So they would be considered more reliable. I mean, somebody commented and said on my video, said, oh, now we've got random YouTubers talking about Afrobeat. And it's like, well, okay, I'm so random, but I've provoked you to write a comment. If I'm so random, oh yeah, you be random as well and write your own. Do you know what I mean? I'm not like, but I had something to say and I said it, and it's based on my own environment. I felt like people who are outside of the culture were asking all these questions because they're like, oh, Afrobeat is just blown up, but where did it come from? And me being Nigerian, I'm like, well, I have this information from my own experiences, hence why I did that video. If you have something to say, Mr. Random, oh yeah, start writing and start filming and set up camera and record and set up microphone and record and say your own. Don't just attack people for speaking their own truth, because as I said, everybody will have different truths. And then the beauty of it was when you hear all these truths, you can now put the pieces together like a puzzle and be like, okay, this makes sense or that doesn't make sense. You could start putting the pieces together. And I think having watched, sorry if you can hear sirens, that's what happens when you live in London. But the beauty of having done my own recording, my own video, and listening to what I've listened to so far, I'm like, okay, I'm not that far removed. There are pieces missing, but I'm not that far removed. And the pieces that are missing are basically because that's not my experience, right? So you can now take somebody else's experience. Simple. Very, very simple. Oh my God. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Hopefully I'll be back again next week. Comment along if you're watching on YouTube. I love reading your comments as you comment along. If you're listening, thank you so much for listening. If you've made it to the end of this episode, yeah, you should subscribe if you're watching on YouTube and do all the right things, notification bell, all them ting right there. But yeah, until the next one, bye.
The eavesdrop is right.